I'm in Washington, D.C., about to get a lesson in free speech at a comedy club.
Show your love for Ruby Nicholas, a first-generation Pakistani Muslim woman. She just won Nick at Night's Funniest Mom in America.
Ruby Nicholas won a national talent competition and became an overnight star.
My parents lied when they came to this country. They told everyone they were Pakistani Muslim immigrants so that I wouldn't have to grow up with the stigma of being known as Hawaiian. This is my mom's explanation of Easter to me and my sisters. True story.
Girls, on Easter, the Jesus Christ will come back from the dead. And he will give all of the good children toys in the night.
What? No, I mixed it. Shut up, sit down, shut up. Shut up. I mixed it.
On Easter, the Jesus Christ will come out of the cave. And if he does not see his shadow, there will be 6 more weeks of chocolate.
Thanks so much, you guys. I'm Ruby Nicholas. That's my time.
So really, you literally got up that time and won that competition?
Yes.
So this is a new career now?
Yes, it's brand new. It was the very first time I'd ever done stand-up, was the audition for that show.
Right, yeah. And do you ever get Muslims in the, American Muslims in the audience?
I do, and there's always a mixed bag reaction. I mean, there are some that really feel as though the fatwa is imminent, you know? So there are those, you know, and there are others who just sort of take it in stride. And
but do you think, I mean, when you say that, you know, what your heritage is, that in some ways comedy is a way to disarm people about
Absolutely.
Islam?
It's a little easier for people to handle some of the Muslim quasi-terrorist types of jokes when you're me and you're like, oh, look, isn't it funny, terrorists? You know, like it's totally different than, you know, a guy with a big beard and a fierce look in his eye.
But also, I mean, is it made sort of other comics suddenly jump in there as well, wanting to sort of talk about Iraq or, you know,
I mean, I think comics as a whole tend to be a little more political, and a few have jumped into the mix in terms of taking liberties with making fun of, you know, Muslims and the Islamic religion a little bit more than in the past. Opening up the conversation, putting the stereotype on the table was in essence a way to break it down for people. I mean, when I do sort of the subtle stereotyping, I mean, I tell a cab driver joke and stuff like that, and my mom called me and said, you should tell people about the contributions that American Muslims have made to this economy. We are the most educated. We are the highest class people. And she got really sort of upset.
Part of Ruby's act is offending people, and she's very good at it. If she wants to say that Jesus gives chocolate to children, she can. But the principles that underpin this freedom go way beyond providing material for comedians. They provide the basis for the law of this land and guarantee freedoms that are carved in stone.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of people to peaceably assemble and to petition the governments for a redress of grievances. When people talk about the fundamental freedoms enshrined in the American Constitution, this is what they're talking about, the First Amendment. And it's the reason why so many American Muslims have been talking to me about the American Constitution, because in it they are free to practice their religion as Muslims, and they are free to speak their mind, unlike so many Muslims in Muslim countries around the world. And if anybody tries to oppress them in this country, they can seek justice from the American government.
The fundamental freedoms guaranteed under Islamic law are not far from these American ideals. And that's amazing when you realize the Quran predates the Constitution by 1,000 years. And there's evidence in Washington that suggests America knows it's indebted to Islam for its own citizens' inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
This is the Supreme Court in Washington. Now, we can't get into film because they're actually in session. But what I wanted to show you is a frieze, which is in the room where the Chief Justices actually sit and dispense justice.
This frieze pays homage to the ideas and principles that have inspired the American legal system, and one of the foundation documents represented in this frieze is the Quran. And in the nation's capital, there are a few other references to Islam, largely unknown, rarely seen. The Thomas Jefferson building contains the Library of Congress, the oldest cultural institution in Washington, which was completed in the 19th century. Around the dome of the reading room is a mural meant to represent the nations and ideas that contributed most to American civilization. And it might come as a surprise to historians that amongst the ideas represented here is Islam. Beneath this great mural, I'm meeting Congressman Keith Ellison, who I came across at the start of my journey in Minneapolis.
So Keith, tell me about when you took your oath of office, because it was on a copy of the Quran and not just any copy.
Well, in fact, it was on this Quran that we have right here before us. And, you know, in fact, this Quran, which is a 2-volume set, has the initials TJ inscribed right here, Thomas Jefferson. And so, you know, we said this is...
What was your reaction when you found out that one of the founding fathers had his own copy of the Quran?
Right, I was gobsmacked.
As we'd say in Britain.
As you'd say in Britain.
It was huge. It was international.
I didn't have much appreciation for why it would be a big deal that a Muslim would be elected to the United States Congress. I thought the issue was going to be color. And I thought, wow, we've really made some great strides in terms of racial justice when people don't care that I'm black anymore. They just want to talk about religion.
But do you think, Keith, that for all the grassroots activism in the Muslim community, that at a national level, the fact is that most Americans are still afraid of Islam?
Americans, I think, are subject to fear, just like any people in the world. But I think there's this deeply rooted tolerance and we've been through a momentous civil rights movement. We've been through all kinds of social change movements, all marching the country toward a greater level of equality. And I think people are just not ready to try to cut anybody out of the deal. But the fact is, in the European context, what it means to be a Brit or a Norwegian is fairly tightly defined.
They wouldn't look like you and me on
right,
the roll.
And what it means to be of that nation you're a certain color, a certain culture, a certain faith.
Yes.
But in America, we're coming all cultures, all colors, our faiths. Even the most conservative American does not question my authenticity as an American. Now, we impose social hierarchies and economic hierarchies. We're not saying we have social justice heaven here. We don't. But the fact is, we don't question our authenticity as Americans.
On this journey, I've met Muslims who've made me rethink my prejudices about America. Muslims here realize something the rest of the world and possibly other Americans have forgotten. This country was born out of a revolutionary moment. Settlers first came here fleeing religious persecution. They overthrew a colonial monarchy. They based their constitution on the ideals of the French Revolution and radical thinkers like Tom Paine, John Locke, and yes, the Prophet Muhammad. But there's a much more recent moment in American history that has come to define America's relationship with Islam. Thinking about America's relationship with Islam, like everybody else, I'm drawn immediately to one city and one moment. And the events of September the 11th, 2001 in New York City changed that relationship between America and Islam forever. And it must also have had an impact on American Muslims. In my next program, I look at how the events of that day affected them. Farouk Mohammed was with the New York City Fire Department on 9/11.
There were Muslims like me there, you know.
Who died as well.
And some that died. Definitely Muslims died there, you know, trying to help others.
James Yee was the Army's Muslim chaplain at Guantanamo prison.
Initially, I was being accused of espionage, spying, and aiding the enemy. Now, these are capital crimes in which military prosecutors even threatened me with the death penalty.
And I explore whether a distinctly American form of Islam is emerging in the aftermath of 9/11. Arabic scholar Laleh Bakhtiar believes something unique is happening here.
The voice of the Muslim woman has not been heard throughout the 1400 years of Islamic history. Now we need to hear from the women. And it's only when you live in America that you are empowered to go forth with your ideas,